South Carolina, 3.5-point favorite against Vandy. The over-under I have.
Stop doing this, guys. Stop making Diego an underdog. Anyway.
Yeah. I was like, wait, what's Will laughing about already? We got a Will laugh.
They just keep making him an underdog and he keeps covering. It's like, bro, how many times do you have to teach you this lesson?
I'm going to give you some numbers on that in a second here. Over-under is 1, count it, 1 South Carolina sack. That doesn't make sense, Connor. 1 South Carolina sack? That's it? This is the Gamecocks defensive front that, we were talking about Ole Miss is maybe the best defensive line in all of college football. South Carolina is certainly a part of that as well. They've averaged 3.9 sacks per game. That's third in FBS. Why would I make this such a low over-under? In 5 SEC games this year, Vandy, they've allowed 4 sacks. That's it. Not a high-volume passing offense. So yeah, that's part of it. But it just speaks to how unbelievably difficult it is to bring down Diego Pavia. You heard J.J. Weaver say it on this very podcast. The guy's just he's small. He's just slippery. It's all over the place. He is confirmed 5'8". It's been harder to bring down Diego Pavia than Jalen Milroe. I mean, think about that. That is wild if you saw those guys standing next to each other, but it's 100% true. Both dual threats. One is better about getting rid of the football than the other. That's just been the case this year. If you're trying to find out why Vandy is in the midst of this turnaround and you want to answer with something more than just Diego Pavia, you're looking for more of a nuanced answer. It's a fun answer and it plays. Lord knows I've said it probably 10 different times this year on different shows. Why is Vandy so different? Here are your key stats, okay? In addition to allowing just 4 sacks in 5 SEC games, Vandy is first in the SEC in time of possession. They bleed the clock. That's what they do. Why are they able to do that? Well, because they convert 46% of their third down. They stay on schedule. They don't have a quarterback that puts them behind schedule, that puts them in these third and long scenarios. It has also turned the ball over, this Vandy offense, just 5 times in 9 games. That's 5th in FBS. That's really good. I think that's a huge reason why Clark Lee's defense doesn't look gassed and overmatched, even though it wasn't like that group had some unbelievable influx of talent and depth. It's not like they went through this facelift in the same way that the Vandy offense did with all of these New Mexico State pieces in. And I think it's obviously part of that is him taking control of this defense, but it's because of this offense setting the table and playing complementary football. But this is all about that third down area. That's when it's money time. You've got a quarterback that can pick it up with his legs. We know that. And you've got an elite tight end in Eli Stowers, who is a unique matchup, and he forces defenses to stay honest. He is number 2 among core 4 tight ends with 154 receiving yards on third down. Just for a little bit of perspective, that's probably not a stat that you're familiar with. I myself had to do a little bit more research on this just to see like, oh, is that really impressive? Or is that kind of like, oh, you think maybe the majority of their receiving yards come on third down? Brock Bowers, you know him. Yeah. Guy that said multiple times, best tight end in the history of college football. All right.
Best rookie tight end ever do.
Yeah, certainly in that discussion already. That guy, he never had more than 128 third down receiving yards in an entire season. Eli Stowers already passed that, okay? Last year, no FBS tight end hit 190 third down receiving yards. And you think, why is that? Why is that specific to the tight end position? Well, on third down, you're maybe needing them for some extra protection, or you're not making them the most sure-handed option because you need just somebody that can get quick separation. Maybe defenses bringing pressure, and that's just not typically how tight ends are used. Stowers won't be used like a traditional tight end, and he doesn't need to be used like a traditional tight end because they run a lot of these 2 tight end sets with Cole Spence, who's a lot more of the traditional tight end. 3 pass blocking snaps all year for Eli Stowers. We're getting really nerdy into this, but I think it's a worthy discussion to have. He lines up more in the slot than he does in line. In lines where traditional tight ends line up. By the way, Eli Stowers, in case you were wondering, passed concussion protocol after he took a pretty significant hit on that touchdown he had against Auburn to be able to put that game away. And here's why I bring up all that, okay? Vandy has not faced a team with a defensive line quite like South Carolina's. South Carolina can make you just rethink everything you want to do as an offense. We've seen that time and time again, okay? I think the closest thing that Vandy faced to South Carolina was Texas, which was when Pavia had those rare 2 interceptions. Longhorns, I thought, did a nice job pursuing him really well. Sometimes he made the play, sometimes he didn't. But am I an idiot for listening to all that and picking against Vandy? Because, as you mentioned, Will, Vandy, underdog. Again, in all of their core 4 games that they played this year, 6 games against core 4 competition, they've been underdogs every time. And every single time they've covered by at least 13 points. And they're 4-2 outright in those games. Nobody's beaten Vandy by more than 3 points in SEC play. But I'm going to say South Carolina is the first because of what they can do up front and the possibility that the Sellers-Rocket combination had to turn the corner game against A&M. Maybe they're not going to do quite what they did against that A&M defense, but I think they can do enough. So I'm going to go South Carolina to win 24-17 against my better judgment. It feels disgusting picking against Diego Pavia, but I just did.
You know me, man. I'm never going to pick against Diego Pavia.
I don't blame you.
And I think the thing here, man, is like we saw a classic good Dowell Loggins game last weekend. We saw a classic good South Carolina game last weekend. You know, this is still that team that struggled mightily against Ole Miss. And I'm not going to say those are exactly equal teams when it comes to pressure up front. You know, I get that. So, sorry. Not pressure up front. When it comes to like the way that they like, let me restart here. Sorry, got 1,000 things on my mind today. When it comes to like the randomness of the season, that's all I was trying to say there is that like they have had these hot and cold stretches where in the big games, they're kind of like the anti of what I would say about like Lane Kiffin, where it's like, okay, you show up in these like big games randomly a couple times a year, but then there are these other games like this that you struggle like against Vandy, right? And so point being, like, I think that usually when South Carolina gets up on this high horse, when they look unbeatable, when their offense is clicking, they have this stinker. Sorry, I lost the plot a little bit, but you see what I'm saying? It's that it's rare for Beamer to truly build momentum in this way, unless, you know, we looked at the end of the 22 season, had another rivalry game, right? Had that moment where we had a vulnerable Clemson team. Right now, Vanderbilt is not vulnerable, right? They're fighting for the best Vanderbilt season in recent memory. Every win is something you got to have, right? And I think that when you look at the Vandy schedule, we've talked about, you know, what's still on the table. Technically, Vandy is still, like, Diego Pavia fully believes he's going to win the SEC this year. And I don't think he's going to let South Carolina stop him. And you're right about the pressure to an extent, but it's about being a sackable quarterback. And the reason why Diego Pavia is a great college quarterback is because he kind of has a little bit of that like Russell Wilson, like infielder mentality where he's hard to tackle. He's elusive. So when you look at like a Jalen Milroe, a guy that has been trying to step in the pocket more, he's been less mobile on his feet. The thing about Diego Pavia is he's always moving, okay? And he's going to get going a direction. He's going to run like a bootleg to where the D-line is always going to be chasing him. He's never going to be a statue. Now, that being said, under pressure, he will also throw picks. And I think that South Carolina has been great at forcing those. But when it comes to these big moments, I'm going to trust Diego Pavia and that offense over Dowell Loggins and the South Carolina offense because I just think I've seen it enough times. And if we can truly unlock the South Carolina offense like we saw last week, they're going to be scary. I think they did enough to continue this experiment for another year. I think we saw what happens when it all works. But I think it has to be a perfect game plan and really, really high-level execution and a great day by Rocket Sanders for sure, which Rocket Sanders is tired, dog. Rocket Sanders ran for the entire state of South Carolina.
I got more thoughts on Rocket that we'll get to later. A little tease for Lad of the Week.
Yeah, but that's it. I'm picking Vandy by a tutty, and I think they stay alive in the SEC conversation.
I'm glad that we're hedging on this. I feel it feels good to be split. I don't want us both to be anti Pavia. Look, I don't need his brothers finding out who we are, and you know, I don't want to cross that bridge. I've been nothing but pro Pavia my entire time, talking about him this year after the Virginia Tech game. Of course, obviously, I've never picked against him once, so this is very new for me. But yeah, this is and Vandy, like, coming off of clinching bowl eligibility. Are like what's still in front of you? What are you still trying to be able to work towards? Because we talk about like Pavia feeling like they can still get into the college football playoff. What does that mindset look like? Does it look like a team that is, you know, because it's riding high in its own right, much like South Carolina is, who is able to handle that success better? That will be the test on Saturday in Nashville.